Today's episode is another re-release of a podcast episode I did several months ago that I wanted to share with you as part of my interview series. I'm thinking of these podcast episodes as sort of the pre-work for those of you who will be attending my upcoming live workshop that I'm offering at the end of February, and also for those of you who weren't able to attend that live workshop. You can use these podcast episodes back to back to really brush up on your interview skills and land, let's face it, multiple job offers at higher level leadership positions. In today's episode, I'm talking about curiosity. It is one of the skills that I spoke about in the first episode of this interview series, but I didn't go into a ton of detail about what it means to actually be curious and the action of curiosity. When you begin to master the skill of staying curious, you're going to find yourself not only getting to that final round of interviews, but you're going to feel better about the whole interview process. And even if it turns out that you don't get offered the role, or you decide at the end of the day that that's not the right role for you, at least you're going to feel more in integrity and alignment so that you know that you're actually creating the role of your dreams. All right, let's get started.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out, because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. So I have been talking about something a lot lately, and I realized that most recently that it hasn't just been lately. It's been going on for probably about a year, and I've certainly been coaching on the subject matter for several years, and I have never done a formal training on it. I don't really talk about it in my book. I bring it up on coaching calls all the time. And you'll even hear me talk about it on this podcast, but it's really more sprinkled into an episode as to, like, for instance, a more recent episode that I did about interviewing at the executive level. And I suggested that you do what I'm going to talk about in today's entire episode as like one small sliver, one small piece of that episode. And it has come to my attention through various different sources that I need to do an entire episode on this. And of course, I was like, well, yeah, I can't believe I haven't done one yet. And so that means that this episode is incredibly important, and you're going to want to take notes, and you might even want to go back to it and listen to it again and again and again. Because what I'm going to share with you in today's episode not only works, it is really accessible to you, and you can start to use this tool today. And that tool is, without further ado, the tool of curiosity. Curiosity. I send my children to an elementary school that has a foundation based in curiosity. And they talk a lot about what they call Socratic seminars, which is an open forum that they do starting at the kindergarten level, where they allow the children to simply ask questions. Instead of delivering information to a group, they teach them how to ask curious questions. And this is the philosophy, a core philosophy of the school, and it's a foundation for all the other teachings they do throughout the entire elementary school. And when I was interviewing for schools for my children, I couldn't help but notice how they pitched the school, how they talked about the strengths of the school sounded like leadership traits. It sounded like growth mindset work. It sounded like, basically, if I send my children here, I'll be creating the next generation of leaders. And that's not coincidental. It is so foundational as an executive leader that you remain curious that I am considering calling it the curiosity index. I really thought about this for today's episode, and I can point to the curiosity index, the amount of curiosity that you bring to a particular situation will dictate your ability to succeed. So if you bring curiosity to your interview process, you have a greater chance of success in landing the role that you're trying to get. If you bring curiosity to your leadership, if you bring curiosity to challenging situations at work, if you bring curiosity to your 15-minute ally meetings, the greater the success of those working in your favor. But you have to learn to bring curiosity into the conversation. And it's like, what does that mean? And why does it work? And how do we actually do that? These are the questions that I get asked all the time inside of Executive Ahead of Time. And then these are the questions and the coaching that I give to the women who have been working for me for several years. And I'm thinking of this like an advanced topic because the women that I have seen curiosity work the best for are the women inside of my boardroom training. And I'm going to give you 3 very solid examples. But if you're not at this quote unquote advanced level and you're still feeling incredibly frustrated at work and you're in the weeds and you're problem solving at what I would consider to be this like lower, more base level, which is there's nothing wrong with that, right? We have to go through that in order to get to this other side. You're going to get so much out of today's episode because you can start to sprinkle it in and you can still reap the rewards of curiosity, even if you only do it halfway or 1/4 of the way. You can still benefit from curiosity. But I want to share with you the more advanced way, the way that the women, when they're really able to let go, are able to use this. So the most recent example is a woman who I've been working with for a couple of years, and she's been in the boardroom, and she's just an absolutely phenomenal vice president, and she made the decision to go out and to find a new role. And as part of that decision, even before she stepped away and decided she was going to look outside of her company, she got really curious. She got very curious about what was next, about her long-term vision. She would ask herself questions about what's possible. And she wasn't so much worried about like, I have to get another job. I have to fill this void. She had given herself a financial buffer, so she had some time. She didn't have to step and leap and jump right into her next role. And she had given herself all of this great space, including time. Like she had 6 months or so to find her next role. And she was like, I'm going to travel and I can take my time. And before she even left her role before that, she was reached out to on LinkedIn to apply for a job. And she was like, she came to coaching and she was like, I don't even think I should apply for this. I don't even know if it's right. Like, I'm not even looking for work yet. And I was like, of course you should apply for it. Of course you should stay curious, right? If you get an opportunity to meet with a C-suite executive leader and have a conversation about your leadership and what's next for you, just stay curious. So she went into this conversation with curiosity on the max, right? So it was technically an interview that she was doing, but what she did instead is she just was like curious about the role, about where the company was headed, about, how her expertise could possibly fit into what they're looking for. That is a very different interview style than what we're so used to, which is us proving ourselves, telling them why we think we're qualified, right? She asked more questions than normal. And so much so that she received a reach out after the interview from the C-suite executive that she had interviewed with, where he said, I think I need to have you back in because I forgot to talk to you about your experience, about your resume. And to me, she was like, oh my gosh, did I do it wrong? Right? And this is the first lesson that I really want you to think about in terms of staying curious and how you'll know if you're being curious enough is because it's not going to feel like your normal conversations. It's going to feel outside of the norm. You're going to be like, wait, that was the most different interview I've ever done. This happens a lot when you interview with CEOs. I'll give this idea of staying curious as almost a requirement. And again, going back to your curiosity index is that the more curious you are, the more likely you are to have success. The more curious you can stay in a conversation, the more likely you are to have the outcome that you actually want out of that conversation. So she engages in this conversation with him. He reaches back out. He says, oh, we forgot to talk about your resume and everything. And I cautioned her. First of all, I told her that's totally normal. It means she aced it. She did fantastic. And then the other thing I cautioned her about is to not default to her old way of being, which is just to, re-engage and tell him about her resume and make sure that he knew all of her qualifications. So she continued to stay curious, and she went back in for another interview with him, and she continued to stay curious. She continued to engage, like, what is it about my resume that seems interesting? Why do you think I'm a good fit? Right? And so all of this is happening for her when she doesn't actually need another role. And so this is why I say that a lot of times this can feel like advanced level stuff, right? So I call getting your next promotion, getting your foundation in place, right? It's like for your house. We have to set the foundation. We have to get your next promotion out of the way. And I just want you to get freaking promoted and get more money, right? Like I want you to understand what it takes to actually get promoted. I want you to have the language to create promotions for yourself so that we can get to this place of curiosity where you're just like, you know what? Everything is within my control, and I am a corporate badass, and I'm showing up as such, but I'm willing to engage. I'm willing to see if this is a great fit, to see if this is a great opportunity. Going back to a more beginner, I hate that word beginner because none of us are beginners. We're all corporate badasses, but I just want to share with you an example inside of Executive ahead of time where a woman really had to step into this level of curiosity for a potential job opportunity. And this was internal. Somebody from a leader that she had invested a ton of time with, building an ally, had offered her a role on her team. And she was like, what? I wasn't looking for a role on your team. Like, this is not even the function that I had thought about being in. And so she came to Executive ahead of time and she was like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I want to just tell her no, but like, I appreciate the offer, but it's not what I'm looking for. And I was like, you don't even know what the offer is. You haven't actually been offered the offer. So go into the conversation and stay curious, engage with her, right? Ask her questions, see why she thinks you're a great fit for that role, right? So that's a way that you can apply this to your situation today. So now I'm going back to the conversation with the woman in the boardroom who is having these conversations with her C-suite executive. And so time goes by and she continues having conversation with other executive leaders at the company. She's able to continue to stay at this level of curiosity. She's able to meet with the CEO. She's able to ask questions very boldly, very directly with human resources. And she's essentially able to craft a role that is higher than the role that she originally applied for. So she's a vice president, and she was looking at this as kind of a lateral move going into another vice president role. But because of the way that she interviewed, it started to turn into a senior vice president level role in terms of the impact that she was going to be making, that she was going to be the second in command to the C-suite executive, that, the influence that she was going to have right out of the gate for this role. And she created that opportunity, that next level opportunity, 150% because she stayed curious, because she was curious about if this really was the best fit, if it really was something that was going to play out and be something that would be viable. So that is an incredible example. And you might be listening to that example and be like, oh, that's all well and good, but right now I'm like freaking out and I have this boss that doesn't like me, or I have this toxic situation at work, or I've been in the same role for 5 years and I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. And like, I'm not going to be able to do that with curiosity. And the truth is, there are elements of curiosity that even at your most stressed, you can begin to apply right now. And I also want to remind you that in the situation that I just described, it could have had a very different outcome, meaning that she was already shutting down to curiosity from the first outreach, which was, she was like, I'm not looking for a role right now. I have plenty of time. I don't want to just take the first one that I get. And I encouraged her to stay curious about what's possible. Could this turn into an incredible role for her, an incredible opportunity? So even she had to continue to lean into that curiosity all throughout the entire process. She had to keep checking in with herself over and over and over again. But that is how we generate successful results. This is how we do it, though, is we have to stay curious. We have to say, oh, I wonder what would happen if. I wonder what this would mean. I wonder what could be possible if anything were possible. It's having that deeper level of questioning, that deeper level of curiosity, that intellectual understanding. You could sort of think of this as PhD level thinking, right? Asking why, over and over and over again. Of course, I don't have my PhD, so I don't know if that's what they do or not. But what I do know is if you engage in curious conversation, you get better results. And so today's episode, I really just want to encourage every single one of you, no matter what level you're at, if you're at this level where you're just like, I have nothing to lose, I am willing to just be open and curious in all of my conversations, then great. Go for it. You're ready. Lean into it. If you're at this more earlier stages, not early in your career, but early in terms of managing your emotions and things still feel really hard and really tight, and you're like, man, I don't have space to be curious. I need a job, or I need to get things moving. I encourage you to still add some level of curiosity to that conversation. Like, what if I didn't have to do a lateral move into my next role? What if this ally could become my sponsor and advocate for me? What if I could get a promotion without adding any more to my plate? That is that level of curiosity that's going to get you much, much closer to your goal than just saying, oh, this isn't possible for me. Screw it. I've got other things to worry about and I'm upset. Like, what if, even if you needed a job desperately or needed that next role or needed to get out of this toxic situation, what if I was able to do this easily? What if I was able to do it in a way where we both win? That is curiosity. And having a greater curiosity index always, always, always leads to more success. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Before you go, I have a really incredible opportunity where we can begin to brainstorm interview techniques and possibilities together live in real time. I am doing a live one-time only workshop on February 29th. This workshop is by invitation only. You must be either on my email list or there is a very teeny tiny small fee to join us live inside of this workshop. You can learn more at stacymayer.com/interview strategy, and you can register to join me in this workshop. If you cannot join us live, there will be a replay. I am throwing in so many bonuses as part of this workshop. I really just want to make sure that you have every single thing that you need to master my executive level interview skills. We're going to be talking about the top 5 interview questions, how you can answer them. We're going to be brainstorming how you can tell a better story about what you're looking for, what you've done in the past, what your unique leadership style is. We'll go more deeply into the practices that I talked about in today's episode. I'm also going to give you my top salary negotiation techniques. I mean, let's face it, you're going to get offered multiple jobs and you want to know how to negotiate those big salaries right off the gate. And I'm going to be giving you access to some of my bonus courses. And for 3 of the women, we're going to be doing a LinkedIn review of their LinkedIn profile page. So all of this is going to be available to you live in the workshop, as well as the replay, and you can listen to it over and over and over again. So whether or not you're actively interviewing right now, if you are actively interviewing right now, you need to go to stacymayer.com/interview strategy and just sign up. Forget about it, because this is going to really change the way that you're interviewing, and it's going to change the number of possibilities that you have right in front of you. If you're not actively interviewing, but you're thinking about it and you want to get yourself set up, also join us on this call. It's going to be huge. I've never offered anything like this before, and I'm just really excited to see how many women I can help advance their careers towards the leadership table. I hope to see you there, stacymayer.com/interview strategy. I'll see you soon. Bye.